being obedient, convenient, easy isn't actually necessarily always a good thing. And that was a paradigm shift for me.
You can hear them trying to manipulate you because they want you to do this thing and they will absolutely exploit you.
I was in it to learn. I was like, this is an amazing opportunity. The feedback that she gave me was,
hello, my beautiful friends. My name is Dr. Becc.
And I am Kristeen Barker, and this is Am I Doing It Wrong? A podcast for doctors by doctors. Every week on the pod, we'll be bringing you conversations which shine light in dark places, normalise the doctor journey, ease unnecessary suffering, and give you actionable steps to thrive in all facets of your life. So grab a cuppa and get cozy for this week's episode of Am I Doing It Wrong? The podcast for doctors by doctors. Hello everyone, welcome our beautiful friends, our Dr. Humans, to another episode of the pod, Am I Doing It Wrong? And oh my goodness, we have an incredible episode in store for you. Today we are going to be talking about people pleasing, but in particular, the things that people pleasing is stealing from you, some of the ways that this might be showing up for you, and what you can do about it. Becc, I am so excited about this, and I feel like I can't wait to get into the scenarios with you because I personally feel like all of my 20s, especially in some of my early 30s, it's like I was walking around in some people-pleasy bubble, and I don't think I knew I was in it. So I think that these scenarios are so important to help us understand like where this is happening for us, because you might not be conscious of it. Do you think that you were a people pleaser at one time, and do you sort of identify with that not knowing concept?
So badly. And I'm just noticing how I'm getting this like cringe feeling when I'm thinking about it. No judgment, guys, if you are still in that people pleasing phase, because I think like I still have people pleasing tendencies 100%. And I think I'm going to be working for the rest of my life to decondition that and have the self-awareness to actually interrupt that in the moment, just to recognize that I'm actually doing it. Because, you know, we've titled this episode about being nice, not about people pleasing, because that's what I used to think it was. I used to think I was being nice. I used to think I was being a normal, nice person. And it took me the self-development work to recognize, no, this is a thing. This is people pleasing. One of the cringe things that's coming up to me when I think about people pleasing is I got the like worst feedback of my life when I must have been like a fourth year med student. I did a 5-year degree, I think it was fourth year, and I was on a surgery rotation, and I was so excited to be with this female surgeon. And I also loved the way that she taught us. She did these like beautiful, Kristeen, it's like the way you do medical education. Her notes, the way she, not only like the resources that she provided us with these beautiful summaries, but they were color-coded, and there are all these systems and almost like hacks and heuristics that she made for us to learn. It's the same way that you teach people, Kristeen, in the sense that you're teaching people in a way that you're like, I really want you to remember this. I really want this to be programmed into your brain, as opposed to when people teach, they'll just like, boof, give you all the information. They'll just like, you know, basically print the up-to-date page and be like, here it is, guys. Well, this woman did her teaching that way. And that was one thing that I really admired her for. And also just recognizing the fact that she was a female surgeon, right? That like in medicine, you know, it's still to this day, but like back then, maybe I guess 10 years ago now, that was another thing that made me think this woman has like, she's been through it. She's had some experience. She's done something special. She's got some guts. Like, who did you have to be? Who are you to be in that position? Anyway, that was my mindset. I didn't like surgery at all, but I was in it to learn. I was like, this is an amazing opportunity. And I don't know, it was halfway through the term or at the end of the term, the feedback that she gave me was keen to impress. And I was like, oh, it felt like the biggest gut punch, because I'd never seen myself that way. Keen to impress, the way that she wrote it, it felt like an insult. It felt like a negative thing. Whereas in my mind, I thought I was doing all the right things. I thought I was doing all the things that she wanted me to do, that medicine wanted us to do as good med students, to learn all the things, to have them like on the tip of your tongue, ready to go, to take them further, to ask questions. I don't know. I don't even really know how it was showing up, but I know that I was a hard worker. And when I got that feedback, it just really hit me. And look, I guess, you could interpret it in different ways, but I feel like that was one of the first times that I was like, oh, maybe doing the right thing, I'm using my little air quotes here, maybe being nice, maybe being, obedient, convenient, easy, isn't actually necessarily always a good thing. And that was a paradigm shift for me. So Kristeen and I, we wanted to bring you guys this episode, and we were talking about it at the start because we're like, do people know that they're people pleasing, or do they think that they're just doing the right thing? Do they think they're just doing that? Do they think they're just being nice? And for me, I think it took that reflection from somebody else to recognize, oh, wait a second, I'm not just doing the right thing. It's not as simple as I'm just being a nice person. There's actually so much more to this conversation. So yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to vulnerably share that like ick moment that came up as we started the episode there.
And I can see you as this little person who's just like trying to be all the things and tick all the boxes, and you've got your idol and she's inspiring you, and it's and I actually find this is a really common way to show up as a people pleaser, or think that you're just being nice, or think you're just doing the right thing. But I think we can all relate to this when we start a new job at the hospital, and we've got, or even just when we get a new consultant and our boss changes, and there's all these dynamics in the hospital, of course, because you're trying to make such a good impression and you want a job and you want a reference and all this stuff, but it can make people really guarded. And I actually feel really uncomfortable with this, obviously, as a consultant now. And when I get a junior coming in, obviously the first couple of days, people are going to be on their best behavior, but what I'm really looking for, I really want to know them. I want to see them. I want to like see what they think. I want to see what they're doing, and I want to like see their unique spark, because I feel like there's a place like for all different types of people. If you're being your authentic self, I can hold space for that, but I actually feel uncomfortable when someone is so guarded that I can't get beneath them. Like, I'm like, I don't know what you're thinking. You seem to be very agreeable, and I'm finding it almost like uncomfortable to supervise you. And so it's so funny now. I can sort of maybe empathize with why she gave you that feedback. And I actually feel like it was masterful to give you that feedback. And look how it changed your life. Like, this woman, I love her. Who is she? She's great.
I personally feel quite different about the feedback. I think it was very poorly delivered. And we never had a conversation about this. Like, this is for somebody, you can argue about, is it the people who went before you? Is it their responsibility to support you and lift you up and, mentor you and sponsor you and things like that? Like, when they find somebody who cares and their heart's in the right place, is it their responsibility? No, I don't necessarily think it is. I think medicine's built in this hierarchy, and I think we just shove people into these leadership, mentorship roles when they don't necessarily want it. Like, this woman might have just wanted to like get on with her life and do her work professionally, and she was, she's agreed for whatever reason to do this teaching job, and she's delivered it beautifully, delivered the teaching curriculum beautifully, but she doesn't necessarily want to, mentor somebody like into like to transform into the person they need to be. Like, and also I think that feedback wasn't heartfully delivered. I think, and maybe this was just my perspective, because I received it as like that gut punch of like, oh, that feels like a real insult. Like, if I wanted to support somebody in that moment, I think I would say something like, I don't know, you seem to be like, my perception of you is that you whatever I say you do, whatever it's that you follow the rules, and you don't, I don't know, follow yourself. You don't think outside the box. You don't, what is it? Like, you don't, I don't know, whatever she wanted, whatever she didn't like about how I was showing up. I would have given more tangible, actionable feedback, and maybe some sort of question in there. But that's probably the coach in me coming out. And again, probably not the job of, it is not the job, I don't believe. I think it's unfair to ask all senior medical people or medical people in general to be teachers, to be mentors, to be the sponsors. I think that's a lot on doctors who are already overworked and probably under high demands just doing their clinical work. But personally, I would have liked to see that feedback delivered in a better way.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it? Because even when I'm saying, like, I'm finding some juniors that come through, I'm feeling like I want to see you, I want to see your authenticity, but I probably will be trying to tease it out of them.
Exactly.
Maybe literally teasing it and allowing, giving them permission to be themselves, I think is during the rotation, and then and then getting to know them as one of the most joyful things is to unlock them. I think it's funny. But I agree with that as well. But I also just think it speaks to this, like how people pleasing or being guarded or trying to fit in the box or trying to show up in a certain way for whoever it is, it can have negative side effects. And I feel like for you and for them, obviously, and I think it's a really important example of how this might be showing up, especially in the clinical environment. And I think a lot of people listening will be finding this really relatable. So that's one way that this can show up. Can you think of any other ways, Beck, that this is showing up in doctor life?
Yeah, this was such a great, because to your point, like the feedback was still full of gold for me. Absolute gold. Like it was, I don't know, I don't think it was probably the sentinel event, but it was one of those bits of like, oof, is this really what I want to lead my life with? Being nice and being like, I don't know, good or doing things right, like following the rules. I think otherwise in the clinical context, it looks like saying yes to things that you don't want to say no to, that you don't want to say yes to. There's this endless opportunity for extracurricular activities. They're not even considered extracurricular activities in medicine, are they? They're kind of considered core curriculum to do things like, and obviously it depends on your training program as well. And it depends on who you want to be as a consultant too. Like, are you going to be somebody who builds a research base? Are you going to be somebody who contributes to the hospital's reputation or the greater healthcare system's scientific literature? Are you going to be somebody who contributes to teaching? Like there are endless opportunities for you to take on more. And whether there's this implicit suggestion that you should be doing more, even though you actually don't want to. And so you take on all this like these extra things outside of your clinical work that really you didn't want to be doing. But, the people pleasing moment that we recognize more easily is when somebody says, can you do this presentation? Can you be on this board? Can you do this meeting? Can you show up to this committee? Can you take this media release? Whatever it might be. Can you take on this patient for me? Can you look after this patient because I'm going on holiday for this period? So many endless opportunities for people directly asking you for things as the clinician. And then you have that opportunity to either be authentic or to people please. And so many of us, to your point before, we don't even recognize this reflexive yes. We just see it as being nice. We just see it as doing the right thing.
Yeah. And then it's only later that you realize, actually, well, to be honest, sometimes in the moment I'll be like, I don't want it.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, great. Sounds super. And then other times it's like, I'm like, yeah, I can do all the things. And then it's like, it's the night before the presentation. You're like, why? Why did pass me? Why? She knew she didn't want to do this. But it's like this kind of resentment builds up and things. So yeah, I think that one's super relatable as well. And I think this sort of another really common place this comes up is laughing things off. Have you ever done that, Beck?
Oh, I've done it.
Oh, I hate myself for it. I hate past Kristeen. So bad. But like it's just
the cringe, right? I'm getting so many cringe.
Cringe. And it's like the misogynistic comments or the, I don't know, but some uncomfortable comment. And it's because you're uncomfortable and you're just like,
oh, the other thing. Like. The other thing, I know we've talked about this before, is like when people are commenting about other people. I used to, and I'm so sad. I get like cringe has been the feeling that's come up before, like as I've shared this like feedback thing and da-da-da. But what I actually feel when I think about times in the past when I was younger, when somebody was speaking poorly about somebody else, whether I knew them or not, or for me to people please, be nice, right? don't make this person in front of me uncomfortable. Just be normal, like just be cool. Don't make a big deal out of things. For that past version of me to stand there and, either just be nothing or worse, give them some kind of reaction, like a laugh, like you say, a like soft smile and nod, whatever it might be. It just makes me feel so sad that I abandoned myself for the sake of being nice, right? And it's so much easier, like as we bring out these examples, to see how we really need to question this idea of, is it really nice? Are you really being nice? I think our default reflex, to not make the person in front of us uncomfortable, to not, cause a kerfuffle, to not speak up, even if it's, asking, just take the surgical feedback example. Like maybe I could have, maybe she wanted to see me like challenge people more. Like if you've got all this knowledge, great. Now start challenging, start asking, I don't know, more pointed questions, I don't know. But to me, that would have been taking up space. To me, that like in that mindset I had back then, it would have been me taking up resources. It would have been me making myself the center. And when we really get down, and this is why, these conversations that we have are so important, when you actually put these situations under a microscope, you finally get to question, is this really nice? Is this really the right thing to do? Is being convenient, normal, obedient, is this most important to me? Or do I want to reassess how I show up just for the sake of ourselves? Like not having this ick, not having this regret, not having this, having to deal with being out of our integrity.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you almost have to go, you have to, I feel maybe not. Maybe some people are just so in the river at very early points in their life, but I almost feel like it's a rite of passage, especially maybe as a female and having in the way we've been socialized to make everyone else happy around us. And maybe if you're an empath, like I identify as that, I feel like if you're an empathic soul, you are sort of trying to ease human suffering. And even if the person's behaving in a way that you don't agree with, you just don't want to feel the bad feelings, and then you don't like conflict, and you don't like, there's a lot of avoidance that is manifesting as being nice or being a people pleaser ultimately. But it doesn't serve us, and we at the end of the day are the only people that are really going to look after us. No one else is going to do it for you. So I think it's so important.
And even in that moment, like I'd really like to challenge this idea. I think this is one of the things that helped me create motivation for myself to change my people pleasing, is recognizing that, I wasn't like, that dialogue of, I'm an empath and I just don't want to make people uncomfortable. I don't want to make things hard for other people. I don't want to see other people uncomfortable or suffer. I really had to call myself out on that, because the truth is, for us, it's not that we can't tolerate the idea of other people being uncomfortable in the moment. It's that we don't want to feel what we will feel in the presence of their discomfort. We don't want to have that dialogue in our head of, I made them uncomfortable. I made them, and here's another layer to this, and I made them not like me because I made them uncomfortable. They are usually the drivers of people pleasing. When we really get down and do the coaching on this, it is self-preservation, and it is us wanting to avoid our own emotions. And I know that's really hard to hear, and it's quite harsh, but I think that telling yourself the truth in this way is the only way to get out of this people pleasing, which can be really tied up with this sense of you doing morally the right thing.
Yeah, and I think that's so interesting because, like you say, it must serve us in some way. It's some kind of survival technique for social circumstances. and avoiding emotions, right? And you're saying that it does have this self-preservation mode. So I guess that's the kind of the benefits of it, or the motivations for using this and becoming this way. But I guess, what do you think are the main things? We said that we were going to have three ways that this steals something from us. Can you sort of give us an idea of where you think this really lets us down, where it takes something away? Because obviously you're saying that we should be sort of thinking the up level is to actually not people please. And we'll talk about all of that in a second and how you might do that. But from this place of, oh, it's self-preserving and I actually don't want to feel that discomfort, it can be quite hard to make that jump. So I think it's good to understand where, yeah, what it's actually detracting from us, where it doesn't serve us.
Yeah, well, I think like, because you've already touched on one of the really important impacts. I'd love to hear it from your perspective, this idea of how when people are people pleasing you, think about, in that situation where you're the consultant here and your team, whether it be, you mentioned, that junior person who's like classically, they don't want to take up space. They want to do the right thing. They're in this busy, under-resourced hospital. The team is big. We all have specific roles. They just want to do the right thing. And they don't know the dynamics of the team. Like, and this is why, you're so often rotating teams. Like if you're a registrar, but then there's also the situation of being a consultant. And we know that we do this with colleagues. And I know I've coached multiple consultants on their relationships with, not only other fellow consultants, but also there's still a hierarchy within that consultant group. There's still that senior person who's been there for 20 years, or even that person who's been there a couple more years than you. There's still this like very strong hierarchy in medicine. So I'd love to hear more from you about your experience of this unintended consequence of when people please you, you actually lose this ability to sort of trust them and feel like you can rely on them, feel like you can have a really truly open dialogue and have a solid relationship with this person.
Yeah, and it's yeah, that as well, because you don't quite know what's going on upstairs. You get this feeling like they're thinking something and you can't tell exactly what it is. And so there is that kind of trust element, but they might be showing up in a way they're obviously very competent. And so from a supervising them doing their medical thing, you can trust them because they're doing a good job and it's evident in the way they communicate. But I think it's more just like I can't connect with them. And maybe that's not important to all consultants. I don't know. But I feel like maybe as someone who has an interest in human potential, like I feel like I want to see people, like really see them, so that I know how they think, how they operate, how they like to work. And obviously if you're managing someone, you want to know what motivates them and you want to know what makes them happy and what drives them so that you can get the best out of that person. Like there's but if you're not being authentic and showing up that way and you're being very guarded and there's like a minimal personality that's coming across, it's just hard for me personally to know what to do with that. And it definitely doesn't build a bridge. And I think maybe I say this on one hand as my experience, but I do actually understand that it might not feel safe to be yourself. Like I get that. And I would love medical culture to not be like that. Like I think there's room for everyone. And I think the more that we are ourselves, it just brings a beautiful humanity to it. So it's probably putting a lot of my own values in here. But yeah, there's like an unsettled feeling where when someone's so guarded and there's a barrier there and it creates disconnection and mistrust, but it's hard to actually conceptualize it. But then if say for example those people, if they wanted like a reference or something for me, I'm gonna find it hard. I'm just gonna because I can't see their unique spark. Like I can maybe say some generic things like, yes, they can see patients and they can do this and that, and it becomes very objective. But if someone has, for example, there's someone particularly, his name's Stuart. I don't want to say his second name just in case he doesn't want to talk about, but there's this resident that I work with called Stuart. He's like a registrar now. And I remember just having him on rotation, and he was an absolute delight to work with. Very unguarded, very vulnerable, loved him. But also, you'd walk down the corridor at the hospital, and it was like everybody was just high-fiving Stuart. And I was like, you're literally the most popular person in this whole building. And that made him, he was so connected to other people. And then also it made me just so fond of him. I loved seeing him at work. He made my day better. He was an absolute vibe, and also so easy to give him a glowing reference because you can see this amazing thing that makes him him. You know what I mean? It's give me something to work with. And so I think in that sense, you might be scared to be yourself, but if being yourself does allow you to show up in a way that you're actually seen and you're not just a wallflower that everyone's ignoring, it actually might be an advantage. You're not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but if you're memorable, at least, it can help you. So I don't know. What do you think about that, Beck? Mm.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think about when I look back at that person who I was back in med school. I was just, you can do everything right. Great. But where does that leave you? It leaves you in this new mold. Like you've morphed yourself to fit into this mold of the right thing, that you probably just conceptualized in your head. You've made it up. Like we love to have the right thing to do, like to have something to aim towards and to know when we are being successful. And therefore to be able to tell ourselves, I'm doing this right. Like to not have to have that doubt anymore of like, am I doing this right? And just necessarily, like when you fit yourself into that mold, I just love that. A triangle trying to squeeze through a circle. Missy Higgins. It comes up. Oh my gosh, I just heard my partner like mortified in my ear about my singing. Don't do that to people. I can't say that bit without singing it, but like it's been such a strong visual for me of like, oh, like you just have to cut off the like pointy edges of you, like to fit into the circle. And then you have to fill the gaps that like the triangle couldn't fill if it was like a bit smaller is what I kind of picture. And it's just, I just think you lose the coolest bits of yourself when the spark, as you say, when you try and fit into the mold. Like they can't all coexist at the same time. You can't be that version of right and good and still like be your authentic self, because it's this pre-made, mold in medicine. They can't coexist. And so I think you need to pick, is it important to be that authentic version of myself, or is it more important that I get that nice, comfortable feeling of like knowing that I'm fitting the mold and doing the right thing? And I think it's very hard for us in medicine because there's this very strong implicit message of this is the right thing. This is the way to be a good doctor. It's explicit sometimes. And I think that leads us to like the next thing that people pleasing steals from us, which is even when you win the people pleasing game, even when you nail it, even when you impress, right? Even when you do the right thing and you tick the boxes and you're successful, even when you win, you still lose. Like that best case scenario of people pleasing, it still kind of sucks, right? You think about like, congratulations, amazing. You have successfully hidden parts of yourself, cut off your edges, smiled and nodded your way into people liking you and wanting to be around you for a fake version of yourself. The best that you get in this situation is a connection based off an adjusted, edited, molded version of you that is not truly you. And so what it steals from you is your only shot at being genuinely connected. You're not connected with other people. You're not out there like living life and having relationships. I'm even talking about just professional relationships. You're not having true professional relationships here if you're a fake version of yourself. And I know the feeling. I think that's probably sort of where I was when I was in high school, like just really trying to be, the likable person and like constantly like self-observing and being like, am I doing this right? Am I being nice to people? Am I being, I don't know, judgmental? Like, what am I supposed to be liked? And you can get lots of friends that way. You really can. You can be surrounded by people. If you are coming in with that mindset of I'm going to adjust myself so that people like me, you will end up surrounded by people. You will. But it won't feel the way that you want it to feel.
And I think being surrounded by people and feeling lonely, and also it's just exhausting. It's continuously exhausting to show up. I love that, being a triangle trying to fit into a circle, and you're like,
You should
ah,
sing
there's
it.
bits of me. Yeah, yeah. I don't know the melody, but yeah, like that sounds a really painful experience, and it does sound to be exhausting. And if you think about basically every time you're having a social interaction, if you're showing up this way, like, oh my goodness, in your doctor life, in your personal life. And one thing I've learned, which sounds so dark, it's so dark, but it's the truth and it is my lived experience. And I'm willing to bet a lot of people listening will have had a similar experience. I learned this the hard way, is that when you are people pleasing and you're showing up in that way, there are people around you who will see this in you, and it's going to do you no favors because they are going to see it as something that they can use to their own advantage. And not it won't be like, oh great, I'm going to like use this person in this way, and then I'll give them a job, and then I'll give them a reward, and then I'll help them. No, 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 no. These people who do this, who see this people pleasy side of you and take advantage of it, basically, that's never ever going to reward you. And so I think it's really important to say that, although it is dark, that's just how the world works. And actually, if you are doing something that is helping someone else out, and that's a mutually beneficial thing, then that won't be the case, right? So, for example, in my programs, I hire people to come and work, right? If I was to ask them if they wanted to do a session, in a teaching session, and they said yes, but they actually meant no, I don't want to be there, I would be completely horrified. And if someone says to me, oh no, actually, I've just had a baby, that's not how life is just now, boundary is put up to me, I am so accepting of that boundary and celebrate that boundary, because I don't want that person to do something that they don't want to do. And it doesn't make me think anything bad about them. It doesn't change anything really. It's just like, okay, I'll try again later
Mm.
or whenever it's organic for them, right? And that's a loving, respectful, like what you're talking about, work relationship. It's not even like obviously like friends and stuff, but even as colleagues, like there are these beautiful relationships you can have where both people are allowed to say no, and it doesn't do anything to change the dynamic. It doesn't make any opportunities go away. It doesn't change anyone's perspective, and that is healthy. But what I find around the place is that's not what is happening. There's a lot of people asking for, I mean, oh my goodness, medical education is one of these places where, people will give you a inverted commas opportunity. And really it's like an unpaid speaking thing that takes you 3 million hours, and like it's on a topic you don't, and you're like, no, I don't want to do that. I do not want to do that. And they try, and you can hear them trying to manipulate you because they want you to do this thing for free. And it's, I do a lot of teaching for free of my own volition. But what I mean is that when someone sees you as someone that they think they can manipulate, and they will absolutely exploit
Mm.
you. And that's not something I want to be part of. So I think that's something that, yeah, like I say, it has to be said, but I'm sorry that it exists in the world.
Yeah, I had that situation recently. Just I can feel that feeling, and I'm just so in my river now about, and we're about to start talking about strategies to use to actually solve this scenario. Don't worry, but just wrapping up with our third thing, that being nice steals from us. And it's I guess in this case it steals the opportunity for relationships with people who are genuinely, authentically like wanting to be with you, and instead you get exchanged for these people who, and I would add, this isn't just a conscious malicious thing that people will select you because you're clearly like easy to manipulate, right? Because they can see that you really care about keeping other people comfortable, being easy and convenient and molding to other people. It's also just, naturally as humans, we are truly self-centered. There's no way around that. We are operating from ourselves. We're thinking about ourselves, not only from, just from the basic level of keeping ourselves safe, but also serving our interests. And this doesn't mean that we're not also simultaneously selfless and gorgeous and generous and wonderful people. But this is the nature of all of us, that we are trying to serve our own interests, of course. And so I think very, again, sort of subconsciously, people can be like, oh, I want to be around you because you're going to make my life better. You're going to make my life easier. And you do put yourself in that position with people pleasing. And I had one of these experiences that would have totally shaken me like years ago, where somebody was asking me to do something and they were really strong in there. And it was in a group setting, it was in public. They were asking me to do something, and I was already gesturing no and kind of withdrawing, saying no, and they just kept layering it on and layering it on. And a version of me who hadn't done this work for myself would have, with just like one more push, one more poke, even if I had the courage to be like no in the first place, I would have broken, because that would have felt so hard for me. I would have broken at the next push, or if not that push, the next push, because some people are just willing to push you into these scenarios despite seeing that you are saying no, and that your genuine, authentic reaction is no, thank you. And so this work is so important, because as much as, we are exposed to so many different personalities in healthcare, and healthcare already takes up so much of our time. Just do the bare minimum clinical work, time and our energy as well. And you will be exposed to personalities who will treat you like this. And if you can't stand your ground and be in your integrity, I'm not talking about creating a conflict here. I'm just talking about being unshakable, being unshaken in that moment, and just being like, no, still my answer, without feeling guilt. Just no, because you like your reasons for saying no. And that people pleasing, being nice or whatever, you sort of subconsciously think it isn't an attractive option to you for all these reasons too. So let's talk about that, because I know that hearing that you guys would want that. And I have so many scenarios in my life now of, like, professionally and personally, being able to say no without that guilt, and being able to stand and look people in the eye in that situation, have them asking me for things, and without creating any conflict, without creating any disconnection in the relationship, without being disrespectful, without doubting myself, I can say no and maintain that good relationship, right? I think that's another part that people really fear, as we spoke about earlier, that, saying no makes people not like you, or makes people, it causes a relationship breakdown or something like that. So I think I'd like to start with that first kind of point of, you need to give yourself an opportunity, if you find yourself people pleasing, to disconfirm the belief that it is nice, that it is doing the right thing, that it is important and virtuous, and particularly above your other values and above your resources, how you're going to use your resources to be convenient and obedient or normal or fit in, right? You need to give yourself the opportunity, whether it's through exploring your thoughts, right? Your belief system around what it means to be nice and what people pleasing gets you, or by actually going out in the world and daring yourself to not people please. See what comes up for you, and then use that information that you get from taking that action, from doing that dare, and actually studying yourself and growing from that scenario. Because the first time you do it, you will feel guilty, you will feel shaken, you will feel afraid this person's not going to like you, that they're going to turn on you, that it's going to cost you something. All that stuff's going to come up. But that's not the end. That's the start. Now you've got some substance to transform with and grow with. And then, Kristeen, you had this next, like, the most important part of people pleasing, but I think it's only accessible when you start to take being nice, take people pleasing off a pedestal, and it creates a space for something else to be available to you, which is what's important to you. Can you speak to how important this strategy is in terms of helping you overcome your people pleasing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think this is such an important point. Like, what's important to you is a big part of this. But I find that, especially when I started doing this or trying this, and like you say, yeah, it feels so uncomfortable when you start, and yeah, and sometimes it can be a bit unhealthy the way you set the boundary. It's not the right, I think there's a right and a wrong way to do that. So we can talk about that in a wee second. But I feel like there was this part of me that didn't know what I wanted. Like, so like because I'd been people pleasing for so long and it was just a mode of operation, it was just how I was going about the world. And it was almost like I didn't know what I wanted. And it could be as simple as I didn't know what I wanted for dinner. I didn't know like what, like if I was eating with someone else, what do they want? Oh, we'll just have what they want, you know? So I didn't know it in those simple things, and I certainly didn't know it in more complex scenarios. And I think there's this part of us that really needs to, when you've committed to like sort of being a non-people pleaser, or just showing up in a different way, understanding like what Beck was saying, that you're going to tell yourself you no longer believe that that's being nice and it's something else, and you choose yourself, you choose something different. I think that's the first stage, is that intentionality behind it. But then there's like this place where you're like, but what is how do I know what I want? And I think that's really tricky. And I think you know, before we came on, we were talking about how this shows up in different ways for us. So for me personally, I often get like a bit of a gut feel. Like I get a bit of a like, oh, like, do you want to do this? Probably not. And I get that little like, and then I might get that, and then override it and say, yes, certainly, Professor such and such, I'll be there with bells on. But there's this part of me that knows immediately that I don't want to do it. So like tuning in and listening for that gut feel, if you feel connected to that. But you were saying, Beck, that this actually shows up differently for you, more as like a down the track resentment. So do you have any other advice on how we can like learn to trust ourselves or tune into what we actually want for ourselves?
Yeah, you've just given us 2 for 1 there. So we've got just questioning, people pleasing, being nice, and how that really functions to serve you. What is the result of that? And is it truly aligned with you? 2, what is actually important to you? Like maybe, guys, for the first time in your life, let's start with you. Let's be like, what matters to you? And then Kristeen's also pointed out, you know, there is this reflex that happens, and you need the self-awareness to be able to interrupt it, because this is so subconscious at this point. It is like a deep tendon reflex, right? In the situation, you have a feeling, and like this all happens subconsciously. You don't see the thought come up of like, I need to be nice, I need to do the right thing, I should do this. Creates an emotion in you, and that emotion makes you say, yes, I'll do it. No, I don't want to do it. Yes, I'll do it. Sure. That is a skill set there, that ability to find yourself in that moment of pause. And I think the easiest way to do that is first through not awareness of your thoughts. I think that's harder. But I think the point of our emotions is to get our attention, like work with that system that is built into your body. That, you know, Kristeen's talking about this gut feel of like, you want to start monitoring yourself. You want to start listening to your emotions and be like, wait a second, there's an emotion here, there's a feeling here, and therefore my mind is like, it's perceiving a potential problem here. That is a higher level than where I had to start, which is I had to start with the aftermath of it, right? I didn't have the self-awareness in the moment to capture that emotion, let alone to figure out what's going on in my brain, and let alone to devise another response of like, either like, no, thank you, ideally, but probably what I needed it was give me like 24 hours to think on that, you know, as a bit of a stepping stone, because I still had all those like strong belief systems about, you know, being nice and doing the right thing. But it was, I had to start with when I was alone with myself after the people pleasing, or when I was, you know, actually doing the thing that I said yes to, it turns out in retrospect, I'm finding I didn't actually want to do this. So I had to start from that place of regret and resentment and scarcity, you know, like, oh, I'm doing, and being out of integrity, like I'm doing this thing that I don't really want to do. I don't really value that much. It's not really serving my mission. And the pain in that moment of, and I should be doing something else. I want to be doing something else to serve my mission. And instead, not only am I not doing that, but I'm putting my energy into this thing. So I had to start there. And then all those other 3 steps, absolutely critical. I needed every one of those steps to change the people-pleasing dynamic for me. But I would recommend not making your goal to like find that pause in the moment first. I think that's it's good to aspire to, but don't just give up. You know, if you're like, okay, this time I'm going to interrupt myself in the moment of people pleasing, and then you don't, I don't want you to do that, because I think that's a recipe for you easily giving up on yourself. I want you to recognize it's a skill set that we need to build, especially for doctors who have spent their whole lives squashing their emotions, like pushing them down, not hearing them. It takes work and time with yourself to be able to just hear those emotions come up again.
Yeah. And you said so much gold there. And I really love that thing you said where the answer in the moment could be, let me get back to you on that. You said, let me have 24 hours to decide, but let me get back to you on that. It's like not giving an answer until you have had time to go and talk to yourself and sort of,
it's like extending the pause, isn't it?
right? Yeah. And I think that is a game changer, but also something that people don't often give themselves permission to do. So I think that's a total hack. And then I guess the other thing that came up when you were talking about how sometimes you might say yes to something you really don't want to do, you do it, it's uncomfortable. And then you've got that kind of, I mean, for me personally, it's like kind of a self-loathing episode that happens after that. Like, how did I let this happen? And you really abandoned yourself. And so I think there's almost like it's a really helpful thing to go through that, because then you can forgive yourself for that, but promise yourself that we're not going to do this again because we're no longer people pleasers. And so just allow yourself to recover from people pleasing behavior, including when you go through with it. You can see yourself doing it like a train crashing. You can see it and you're on the train. But you're like, right, well, we're doing it. And that's okay. And it's just like, once that's over, I think it's important to forgive yourself. Yeah. But I think it's super, I think those are super practical ways to sort of just start testing the waters. And do you know what I was going to say before? Yeah. Like when you do, apart from it feeling uncomfortable to say no and having that guilt and that worry about the consequences, you do find that there are usually no consequences and people just move on with their life. So the more you do this from a place of integrity, you actually find that you feel safer to do it, because all they need is an answer from you, and then they'll pivot and they'll go somewhere else. So you probably don't have to get all tied up and worried about it. But what I know that I did when I started trying to say no, when it was something that was so foreign to me, is I would do it in a super wounded way. So it would look like an email that had a lot of emotion in it, or like because I would get almost like the reaction, like, how dare they ask me to do this? Like like the gumption. Imagine asking me to do this without even paying me, or like, and like when I saw the exploitation or something, I would have an emotional response. And I think it was coming across in my reply, like, like, this is not like, why are you asking me to do this? Somehow would make it into the email in a strange way. Or it was just very wounded, or I'd feel like I'd have to justify my no, like, no, because on this day I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and have all these excuses, when really, like, no as a full sentence is actually the truth of it. And I know it sounds cliched, but you don't have to tell anyone why. No, that does not, that's just not in my priorities right now. No, I don't. Yeah, or just no, like,
yeah.
But you don't have to tell them why. Yeah.
And I think the way that this shows up in a really sneaky way for people, because I think we've been like therapyized, like we've all got the Instagram, like therapy speak going on. But I think something that people hide behind an inability to just stand in their integrity by saying things like, I need this for myself. I need this time off. They'll say, I need this space. I just need this. Or, using the word need as if like the only way that you can say no is if you're saying this is a need for you and you're not going to be okay if you don't, pursue and stay aligned with that need. I like my clients to just say, no, like, okay, perhaps, yeah, sure, there are some needs. But can we just say, I want this instead? Like when we do that step 2 of what do you value, what's important to you, you can just say, no, I don't want to. You don't have to turn everything into a need, right? You can just say, no, because XYZ is more important to me. Again, you don't have to explain this in the email, but don't go and like hide behind like, I need to say no to this, or I need this, or I need to not do this because otherwise I won't be okay. You're reinforcing to yourself that you're fragile and that you're at the edge and that you're going to break. And you're reinforcing to yourself that the only way that you're going to let yourself say no to people is if you're about to break. You can just want something And that's enough. And I love to train my clients in the discomfort of that, because then all you've got to stand on is, I'm choosing this because I want it. My want is important. What I value, my mission, my resources going to the right place matters. That's the full sentence. That's the end of the story. Because I think when people hear no is a full sentence, you can easily sort of feel very like you don't care about the other person, like you're disrespectful. And I hope that it helps people, but it didn't help me. It felt like, oh, I'm just going to be a jerk, basically. But instead, you're not just saying no without any cares. You're saying no from the place of being a very, very caring person about things that are important to you, about the people in your life, about the mission that you're trying to serve. You're saying no for that. And that gives me so much strength. That gives me an easy no to people, because I'm like, no, because for me, this is more important. And suddenly the guilt, flushes away, because I'm back in service again. I'm back in my own version of doing the right thing, of truly being a nice person, a good person, somebody of integrity. And I think ultimately, when you go through these 4 steps that Kristeen and I have given you here, that's where you get to be, and that's how you are unshakable. And so watch yourself when you're finding yourself wounded, as Kristeen's saying, and when you're finding this need to justify and hide behind the need, this feeling of I need to justify, to say no. We've still got work to do if you're in that phase, and it's worth doing that work.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. And I feel like that was just such a beautiful place to sort of end today on. Just so wonderful. And I really hope this is so close to my heart, because I do feel like I'm sure there's ways that I'm still showing up in this way. And you, Beck, you were saying there are just these little scenarios that catch you and you think, oh, this is interesting. And what's also true is it was so much worse before. And just so for anyone who's listening, I just want to normalize this. It does seem like a rite of passage. And when you take that step to be brave, dip your toes into saying no, go through the discomfort of that, understand that nothing really that bad happens, and anyone you've displeased, they're probably not worth your time anyways. It's all fine. Just keep moving as long as you like your reasons. And it will change who you are. It will change how you show up in the world, and it'll be a better place because of it. So I absolutely love this conversation. Thank you so much, Becc, and thank you to everyone who's been listening. We love you all, and of course, if there's anything that you want to add to the conversation, feel free to pop it in the comments below. If there's anything you'd like to cover on the pod, give your suggestions below. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again in the next episode. Bye.
I've been waiting all my life for something. I've been down the darkest roads and up